Needs Action Network. Welcome everyone to the final meeting of the Student Basic Needs Action Network. I'm really glad that, yay, I know, right? We've accomplished so much. It's so hard to just even wrap my head around where we started in August last year and then how far we've come even by January, and to now have had 5 incredible meetings. And this is kind of our culminating meeting to really discuss the final recommendations of this group, and which is really a guiding document for our work over the next several years. So just really thankful for your ongoing engagement and commitment to this work. So excited for everything that's to come. So I'm just going to jump in. I just as a PowerPoint to kind of guide our conversation. Let me just get set up here. And for those, I know there's a lot of us in this room today, but I was actually not planning to do breakout groups. I think it would be really good to keep us all as one large group. So feel free to engage through the chat, to raise your hand, to just interrupt and continue to ask questions or make comments, share ideas. This is really still very much a draft document. We have a lot of opportunity to still sculpt it if needed. I think that it's in a really good place, but of course, very much excited to hear y'all's thoughts and feedback as well. So let's see. So here we are, just kind of setting our context. This was the charge of our group, that we wanted to create a state plan that would help us to achieve 2 really important goals. 1, to increase access to basic needs supports for college students, and 2, to increase access to post-secondary education for individuals receiving state supports. The Action Network is one element of a broader approach to an equity audit that we have been participating in with support from the Lumina Foundation. And Kentucky chose our project to really focus on student basic needs. And so there have been many elements of this project that have informed the work of this Action Network, and this group has really delivered the priority recommendations and critical success factors that we'll talk more about. Also, just recognizing that basic needs is fundamentally an equity issue, ensuring that all students have the different levels and different types of supports that they may individually need in order to be able to focus on their educational goals and ultimately be successful in completing their programs. And our approach to kind of centering equity in the design of this project was 4-fold. 1, we were intentional about centering student voice, which we did through our faculty did through 18 focus groups with 50 students across Kentucky institutions. We've also really been intentional about engaging diverse teams, representative of different racial groups, organizational groups, service priorities, as well as regions throughout Kentucky. We have looked at the data for our state by leveraging our really incredible and robust longitudinal data system, and we have disaggregated that data by race, region, resources, and age. And then finally, and this is kind of where this report is our culminating document, and we want to ensure that as we move forward with our recommendations and our next steps, that we have a culturally competent and culturally responsive approach to this work. We've been really thoughtful about this, but of course there's always opportunity for improvement and growth. So please don't hesitate to share where you see those opportunities.
We're outside.
Leanne, did you have a comment? Okay, no problem. Okay, so just our goal for today is pretty laser focused, and we are going to be hopefully getting to a point where all of us as stakeholders are confident in the next steps, are confident in our recommendations for Kentucky as we move forward to achieving our 2 objectives. Now, I will just say, as far as the document goes, after we have, if there's additional updates that we want to make, we'll be sending it to a team for all of the kind of copy editing and other detail type reviews that will take place over the next week. And then it will even go to our kind of graphic design folks for some nice beautification. And then it will come back out to all of you as a final document by June 9th, which was kind of our goal date. So yes, share any specific kind of wordsmithing or grammatical suggestions if you have those over email. And today we're going to be focused on kind of big content and the themes that we're moving forward. Okay, so starting off with the discovery project section of the report, I really just tried to provide an overview of the findings, the key findings from the data project, from the Campus Voice Research Project, as well as from the policy scan and stakeholder interviews. So this is going to be just an open conversation, and we've got 20 minutes or however long it takes. But does anybody have any thoughts, comments, suggestions related to the section in the report focused on the discovery projects? Just want to make sure that we've really accurately described what those key findings were and how we went about our work.
Lily, this is Shauna, and this might be more of just an edit, but in that first paragraph on the top of page 4, when you're talking about reaching 200% above the federal poverty line for an individual, it wasn't clear to me if you were trying to say they hit a mark above the poverty line of 200%, or are they actually 200 percentage points beyond the poverty line? I guess I need some clarification there.
Is it this statement right here,
Yes,
Shauna?
yes.
Okay. That is just that their earnings were over the threshold of 200% of the federal poverty line. So they were earning double what the federal poverty line current threshold is.
Okay, so they were earning double the poverty line, not just above the 200% line.
Well, the 200% line, and other folks, please feel free to chime in here, is going to be that line that's double the federal poverty line. So it's kind of a both and, I feel like, the way that you just described it. Anybody else have a way to interpret this?
I think what you're trying to capture is that people are earning at least or earning a salary that is above the 200% of the federal poverty line for their family size.
Yes.
It's a little, I think it is a little bit, it could bear to be clarified a little bit. Yeah, I think I would say earning at least, 200% of the federal poverty level. As I see what Sean is saying, it is a little bit unclear.
Great.
Thanks, that helps me a lot.
Yeah, and I think in this instance, Shauna, that's a good flag, because 200% above the federal poverty level would actually be 300% of the federal poverty level in the way that it was currently written.
Yeah, that's kind of where my head was. That was my struggle.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, it could
now.
definitely have been interpreted that way. I think I knew what Lily was saying, but I definitely think
you.
it could have been interpreted that way. Yeah.
Excellent point. Okay. I haven't checked if Matt Berry or anybody else from KY Stats are you here today? Is Travis on? There's so many folks. Okay, well, we have definitely shared the particular KY Stats one with those two individuals. And so we'll definitely make sure that it's accurate and described as clearly as possible. But if anybody else had questions, because sometimes it's when you're a data person, you may not, something may make sense to you, but may not make sense to another person that doesn't look at the data all the time. So is there anything else from y'all's perspectives that you think could stand to be clarified?
Lily, this is Itzy here.
Hi, Zitzi.
Something that's standing out to me, and I don't know if we would want to talk about this now or when we're talking about sort of the discovery portion more broadly, is I know that there are different components to the discovery project. I'm wondering if you would agree that there's consensus emerging across the different data sources. And if we would want to add just a sentence or two, sort of, yeah, exactly where you are, or I guess a little bit above, where we sort of introduce this component of the
Right.
overall work.
Yes. So maybe like as a conclusion to the, actually, let me put it down a little further because I think that, I'm not sure if there was an overall conclusion to the discovery project section, might have just transitioned. So here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I was imagining it at the beginning, but I think this also works really well.
When somebody suggested writing an executive summary, amazing point. So that this paragraph could potentially be incorporated into the executive summary as kind of summarizing the consensus. I
Yeah.
agree with you. It was really almost, I mean, just beautiful how the
Right.
different projects really supported one another in the kind of emerging priorities. Thank you for bringing that up. Zitzi, while I know you and Stephanie are here, any thoughts on the second discovery project related to the Campus Voice Research Project?
No, I thought it looked good. One of the things that we are still in the process of pulling that data out, getting those interviews all transcribed and pulling that data out. So we should have more when we get done with that.
What's that?
Agreed. Oh, go ahead, Lily.
I was just going to ask if there was a timeline that you anticipated for that.
Summer. I guess too, it'd be nice to put some of this work in conversation with the academic literature too. And so I'm wondering, Lily, if there's room for like a sentence or two about, there will be forthcoming academic publications out of this work.
Yeah. That's right. Okay.
And then Lily, this is Phil at ITRUST.
Hey, Phil.
Hey, I was thinking that makes me think in the previous section as well, there was a mention of like further analysis would be needed. I think it was to identify like public benefit distribution by race. And so wasn't sure to what extent this will be sort of a living document that, as in that case, for example, like Travis is doing more work, that then the results would kind of show up back here versus would that be somewhere else that would be kind of findable by folks afterwards as that kind of stuff comes down the pike?
Well, absolutely. One of our critical success factors is the leveraging of the longitudinal data system to really identify the inputs, impact, and outcomes. And so that will, I don't know what it exactly will look like, but I envision us being like determining what do we think are the key performance indicators that we would like to track consistently across our institutions or our organizations that are going to help us, gauge our progress and our success. And this component of further disaggregation or, further analysis would be a component of that to ensure that it's, different populations are representative or they're not underrepresented in the data. Does that make sense? I guess I could,
Yeah,
I could definitely call that out in maybe put it in the critical success factors really explicitly? Or do you recommend it in the, I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. That's probably really dizzying for everybody.
Yeah, however it makes sense to preview that is great. I was just thinking about like once, like for example, once those indicators are identified, like where do they go and how does that relate to this document? So like, is this document like a static thing as of June 9th or whatever? Or are you gonna kind of like as the summer when more stuff comes out from the research team and Travis does more stuff, like is this gonna be the place where like you're continuing to add to it? I just didn't know kind of like how you're thinking about format of like keeping the info for the project over the next future.
I envision this will be a final document. And so, but we will be producing more documents, you know, proposals and other projects that will come. So we'll have to
Got
find another way to incorporate that in a publication.
Got it. Just like follow-on pieces afterwards
Yeah.
as you're like following up on the.
Where is this? What, I'm trying to find the exact reference.
Can I jump in here, Lily? Sorry, while you're doing that. Phil, one thing that occurred to me, and I would love for Steph to weigh in here too, is, you know, I can imagine sort of a companion piece to an academic article, like a 2-page version of like an academic article that then is written in a less jargony way and is maybe lives Lily wherever, like near wherever this document ends up living.
A companion piece to the research article that is, can you repeat that, Tsitsi?
Yeah, just that will live, you know, I assume this final document will live online somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, you know, maybe like we add that document
Okay.
the same or a close place online, like same, I don't know, I'm sorry, this is hard for me. Maybe it's like if it's 2 links on the same website or something like that. I don't know if that's a possibility, but to Phil's point about sort of this work is not necessarily all ending on June 9th.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Zitzi, that, correct me if I'm wrong, but your point is that not everybody might want to read a full article, research article, but they may want to have a snapshot of what the, you know, what the full findings were.
Thank you. Anything, okay, so just kind of thinking about the policy scan, anything pop out to folks related to the findings or next steps there and the stakeholder interviews as well? I'd love to hear any thoughts from our DCBS friends or our SNAP intermediary partners who are some of the key stakeholders interviewed.
Well, this is Shauna, and I'll just say it sounded right on target to me. I feel like the team has done a great job with this.
All right, fantastic. Kira, I see your thumbs up. Okay, great. And this was just an introduction to the, let's see. Okay. So thinking about the priority recommendations, just putting a little bit, there was a shift that happened from the last meeting that we had to this report. we started off in our 5th meeting where we were going to talk about the critical success factors. And we had, I believe, 5 priority recommendations in each under, or maybe it was 5 and 4, or actually I think it was 6 under priority 1 and then 4 under priority or objective 2. And so we have, after kind of synthesizing all of the notes and trying to really kind of like understand a little bit more fully what's the difference between a recommendation and a critical success factor, we moved 2 of the recommendations from objective 1, but they are captured in critical success factors. Like I feel like 1 was a communication plan and maybe even asset mapping. I think both of those, but because they came up in so many discussions as like key elements to us being able to do any of the things, we wanted to kind of move them out a layer. So that leaves us with 4 priority recommendations to get us started. We're not stating that this is the be all end all, the exhaustive list of things that we're going to do, but we have kind of identified these are the priorities right now. These are the first things that we want to make sure we do to try to remove barriers, increase access, and support more students in gaining access to supports. So I'll just kind of review these 4, and if you have any thoughts on language or something that really should be put back in here or any other considerations, please feel free. So we've discussed implementing a basic needs screening and benefits eligibility screening for students. And just one other note, like all of these recommendations that you all identified really emerged, I think, and are supported by the findings of the discovery projects. So we, like looking at the data, we identified a pretty significant SNAP gap opportunity. 1 in 4 Pell students at KCTCS and 1 in 10 Pell students at our public universities are actually participating in SNAP or public benefit program. And we just, really truly want to be more proactive in supporting those students to access those benefits. Also through the research of the Campus Voice Research Project, students will come when they have an emergency, they're in crisis, and we would love to be able to more proactively support and connect students to resources before they experience a crisis that could actually make them choose to delay or depart from education. And it sounded like there were a lot of tools already available to help us do this. Tools, people, human resources, screeners that exist, those kind of things. So if there's any thoughts or additional comments around the first recommendation, let's hear it. I'll just kind of go through them, and if you want to talk about any of them at any time, that's fine too. We also created a recommendation to review our state public benefit plans and programs to look for opportunities to increase flexibility for post-secondary students. And I believe that through conversations with our DCBS partners and Carrie, that this has already been a conversation that has kind of started moving forward. And so that's really exciting. And I know I don't want to make too strong of a statement about it, Lisa, Todd, and others, but I did put in there that it sounded like we were really aligned on our common goals to increase access or increase flexibility wherever possible. So
Completely agree with that. Yes, we are.
that's fantastic. Okay. And of course, like there are a lot of different versions of what that could look like looking at different ways that other states do it. And so through which I imagine will be kind of a smaller work group team, we'll figure out what works best for Kentucky. Do you want to include anything around kind of I don't know if there's already a timeline in place for some of this work, or if there's a specific deadline when this is when we renew our state plans, or this is when we submit our updated state plans, if there's a target date around that work.
I would have to, Todd or others on here, can you help answer that question? I know Lily, there's Todd, but I know too, we were, like you said, a smaller work group to come back together to really dig into that, to some of, I know we had a follow-up conversation, but then I think we need to schedule something else to really, and maybe Carrie can join us as well, so we could really dig into those recommendations and have a more deeper dive conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Eh,
I agree
That's
with that. I think-
accurate. Sorry, go ahead,
Go
Todd.
Go ahead, Carrie.
I was just going to say there was a list of things that we had discussed that we agreed needed additional information and background on, and we're going to find time to schedule that and continue that conversation.
Right,
Right,
because
and
we would
those
love to
come-
increase those flexibilities. We just need to work on it together.
Yes, and the outcome of that conversation, I think, will set the timeline, Lily, because it'll, depending on what we can do and if there are reg changes, those kind of things will kind of set the timeline for us.
And the good news is that Carrie's going to continue working with us over this next year as well. And so we will be able to take advantage of her expertise in supporting us in this work, and also networking with other states. So, we could very easily get a conversation with folks that are in other states that have kind of woven this, like threaded the needle, so to speak, for this work. So, okay. All right, so we identified as a priority recommendation to increase staff capacity of colleges and universities to provide basic needs support for students. I think every time we talked about wanting to do more for students, we also kind of asked the question, and how are we going to do more? Who is going to do more? Just knowing how many students we have. And so the demand is great. And yet through the Campus Voice Research Project, the asset mapping, only one of our campuses has one full-time dedicated person to support the thousands and thousands of students. So that does seem like a high priority. For both our community colleges as well as our four-year universities in Kentucky. And I think, I've kind of thought about, these are different, but they're also connected. The recommendation to provide training and ongoing professional development for a broader community of staff and faculty on our campuses is also a part of building our capacity, but it doesn't replace like kind of the actual dedicated capacity to this work. But I think that both are really, really important. And, the Campus Voice Research Project really identified that students go to who they know, and they want to share this personal information or challenges that they may be having with someone that they know and trust. And so, increasing the awareness around resources and supports, being able to provide that warm handoff to the dedicated staff person will be, I think, really valuable in the overall capacity and ecosystem of support for students. Any additional thoughts related to these 4 recommendations? Does this feel like the right place to start? Are we going in the right direction toward achieving this objective? Okay, I see some head nodding.
Lily, this is Phil. I trust one question. I think this is kind of what you had said before about next steps. So the idea with these is, this is kind of like what the vision is, these things. And then in terms of how to get there, that will be what folks who are working on this are figuring out. So for example, number 3, like that could be DCBS staff, it could be permanent staff at the colleges, it could be AmeriCorps members, it could be like who knows what. But that's going to be up to whoever's kind of taking number 3 and leading it forward. And same for the other ones, right?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we probably have a lot of ideas in our head about how we're going to move some of these things forward, but wanted to keep this document more as just a guiding document, and as opposed to kind of an action plan. I guess that language is in our charge, but we will be developing more of an implementation plan, I would say, as a step 2 to some of this. Okay, so continuing on, and now looking at our objective number 2 to increase access to post-secondary education for individuals receiving state supports. We identified 4 recommendations. And the first one is to explore solutions to the lack of childcare availability and affordability to remove a barrier to post-secondary enrollment. And I think, you know, in many of our conversations, this kept coming up as they may want to, you know, they may be very interested, but they still have this very significant barrier in order to be able to participate. Would love to hear some comments and thoughts on this particular recommendation.
And I don't know if anyone from DCBS Division of Child Care is on. I don't know I know we invited them to our in-person meeting, but I don't know if the invite got forward for our recurring ongoing meetings. So I don't see them on here. And I apologize for that.
No, that's my mistake. And thank you for pointing that out, Lisa. Yeah, I'm really thankful that Philip and others were able to join us at our last in-person meeting. My gosh, so much is going on from the DCBS perspective around childcare access and affordability. And so this is really helping connect dots, I think, and engage some of our college and university partners in the conversation to see how they can also be partners in the work. I think that I could definitely see a specific work group, you know, that is beyond just our DCBS agency folks, you know, but really community-based partners, college and university partners, DCBS, trying to work together. And one other thing, this is certainly an element where we could explore external funding, we could explore additional technical assistance, because there are some, you know, a lot of states and a lot of organizations nationally are also trying to wrestle with this issue. And so it's just, we are flagging it as a major priority that we want to dig deeper on. Barb?
Well, and I don't know if number 1 covers the lack of staffing at child care centers, which directly impacts availability.
That workforce question is also a key element to this. Let me make a note of that. I think, oops. Sorry, let me pull up the document again. It has not directly been identified here, Barb. I think that there are workforce initiatives on this, but I think that we also have to address some of the living wage concerns, you know, of folks going into this field. Okay. I feel like that is something, and Melissa Bell, I see you on here. I know that, I'm not sure, is this a part of our workforce conversation at CPE, or Amanda Johansson? I know that you're on here.
In terms of childcare, no, I mean, most of the workforce is focused right now on healthcare.
Yeah.
But we have been having childcare and, you know, early childhood education. Those issues might be coming up in the CEC discussions.
Okay, that's the Commonwealth Education Continuum. Okay, so, and Delaney, I see you on here from Pritchard Committee. I know that you all are very involved in some of the childcare availability work. How does this workforce question kind of intersect with your all's work as well?
Yeah, it definitely is very relatable to that. And I know as part of our big bold ask with funding for childcare, that's going to be a major priority for Pritchard. coming up in the 2024 budget session. So something we definitely want to be involved with as those conversations unfold.
Excellent. Okay. Barb, really, thank you so much for flagging that. I think that we can't, I mean, you, obviously it's a trifecta of an issue. You can't just solve one: access of availability or, you know, the staffing. So thank you. Okay, continuing on, we also discussed pretty extensively, both through the stakeholder interviews that Carrie led, our policy scan, and then just coming up repeatedly in discussions in our Action Network meetings, the whole kind of educational pipeline from our SNAP clients into potentially an ENT program, but just any other kind of workforce kind of training initiatives, like any work requirement programs that we offer. How are we helping those individuals connect to post-secondary education so that their ultimate mobility is significantly enhanced, in addition to just kind of meeting the compliance issues of the program. So we kind of focused on explore models and incentives to increase direct referrals from DCBS and our workforce partners to post-secondary programs as a high level priority or recommendation around that. Are there any thoughts, questions? Does this accurately describe the work that we think we need to do? And are there any updates to share around this? Because I feel like, you know, the DCBS folks, that you'd been thinking about different approaches. So does this at least align with the approaches that you're considering?
Yes, I think that it does.
Yeah, it
Okay.
definitely aligns with, I think the direction we want to go with ENT. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Lovely. Continuing on, we talked about kind of just as much as the higher ed folks are not super aware of the details related to benefit programs and eligibility, our, you know, community partners are not as much aware of all the details related to college admissions and financial aid and, you know, programs and course scheduling and when do even semesters start, and a lot of those details that are incredibly important to being able to provide a client guidance or information about the opportunities that are available. So we really thought that a priority recommendation around training and information sharing among partners focused on the post-secondary programs and processes would be very valuable, as well as we talked about a lot of direct outreach opportunities to different benefit recipients. So the communication to SNAP recipients versus ABOD SNAP recipients versus or compared to maybe Medicaid or CCAP or, you know, some of the other programs that exist. But being able to more, I guess, provide more focused outreach to folks. And this could potentially, this could be regional as well. You know, I think that we really are, I think that one of the big values of this Action Network that we've seen is just the expertise that everybody brings to the table. And if you are, you know, in those post-secondary referral conversations, those would be very regional kind of conversations, because folks are going to want to attend a program that is nearby or online, but probably nearby. And so really focusing on the relationships around the, you know, the Southeastern Kentucky community colleges and those community-based organizations that are working with clients in that region. Does that make, I mean, I could certainly see this as partnership meetings in addition to more online kind of virtual training sessions, but really I think the relationship element is going to be an important piece of that. Does that make sense? Is there any other thoughts? Have we done this before? Have we done kind of the regional partnership meetings with workforce, higher ed, community agencies? And John, I certainly see the adult education being one of the prime engagement points for your whole crew and team, and the resources that you have available to support education.
Yes, ma'am. Particularly across the full spectrum of 1 through 4, but specifically looking at number 4. I mean, those are things that are specifically, they align with where we're going and what we should be doing. And trying to, specifically for the Office of Adult Education, to get approval to establish a line item to subsidize a lot of these components for students that fit within our network, which is essentially so everybody that's greater than the age of 18.
Amazing. Okay, so anybody, let's see, Tommy, I know that you're on here kind of representing Community Action Council. Would that be beneficial, do you think, for you and your team?
Yeah, I
Information
agree. I agree, man. I've shared I think information sharing is one of the most important things we can do. And as far as a group, I don't know, we've had individual, like where I've talked to, with the Ready to Work coordinator and different people there, but to have a bigger group probably would be a good thing as well.
Great, thank you. Anyone from our higher ed folks want to chime in? Let's see. See, who can I call on? See. Dee, what do you think? Would love to know your thoughts on you're very much into community partnerships and engaging with others to do something together. Does this sound like this would resonate from your higher ed background? Uh-oh. Shauna, what about you?
Well, I agree and support everything I'm seeing here. I think it's a very accurate description of where we are and where we need to be headed.
Thanks, Shauna.
I just also want to add that I've been doing state technical assistance for a while, and this action network represents some of the most engaged, thoughtful, committed partners that I've ever worked with in a state. And I just want to commend all of you for coming to the table around these conversations. I'm learning a lot through this action network that I can apply to help other states. And so I just want to thank you for this experience and for your commitment to students. It's been really great to see.
Thanks, Carrie. Okay, so the last recommendation was around, and John, you mentioned this, communicating the clear career pathways that are aligned to in-demand market opportunities, labor market opportunities that lead to the financial self-sufficiency and economic mobility. And that is so, so important. Obviously, our whole purpose of all of this education and training is economic mobility for Kentuckians and financial self-sufficiency and family sustainability, or what's the word? Security. So, but needing to be able to really clearly communicate the opportunities to folks and the pathways and the processes is maybe a missing element. I think that we are doing it in some ways, but to be able to really use it for this particular population as well is going to be important.
And Lily, I would add, I mean, in my mind, that's where the WIOA identified 5 sectors and the Work Ready Kentucky scholarships, which are supposed to be targeting those higher wage and demand areas of post-secondary programming come into play.
Absolutely.
And we can also take a look at, I don't want to say changing the paradigm, but you know, it's not always so persons trying to go to school to find work. Sometimes your work enable to set the conditions to go to school to be able to do the things that you actually want to do, perhaps on a greater level. So it's not always the traditional way of thinking. I mean, we can kind of flip it in some cases. So that's certainly something to think about specifically with number 4, because that's not the end all to be all for all persons, because the population that we're speaking about, you more than likely need to work to go to school to be able to get to where you want to be in a particular season of life. So I think we just need to kind of just look at that process from, you know, you want to view it from all angles.
That's great, John. I mean, that definitely speaks to employer support for continuing education of their employees, for upskilling. I think it also, you know, kind of puts back on some of our college and university partners to think about the flexibility that they have with their programming. So how can it be a work and learn opportunity? I think that that's a great point. And do you feel like in the report that is reflected, or do we want to make some enhancements to that section around the work and learn?
I think it's captured from a specific task standpoint, and then there are associated implied tasks, if you will, that speak to that. So I think it's captured.
Okay, I'll just do another review.
And Lily, this is Shauna, and I might send you some information related to an initiative out of our KCTCS workforce arena that we call Education First Employers. And I think some of you are aware of where Jesse Shook, our workforce VP, is in the process of working with our colleges to identify employers who are making some real commitments in the arena of, you know, supporting working students and student workers and work-based learning and things of that nature. So I will forward some additional information about that initiative, and you can decide if you see a place for that in this.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we feel good about our recommendations. Can I get some thumbs up on the screen? How do you do the little, I saw somebody do that fancy yellow thumbs up. I couldn't figure out how to do that.
It's in your reactions at the lower right-hand corner of your screen. See, like a smiley face.
All right, well, you guys are amazing. It's fine. I've got too many mental things happening at the moment. Okay, so moving forward, this is the part where we talked for 5 hours on April 26th. And now this is maybe the first time that you've kind of seen, because we had 15, I don't know, 20 different conversations that were really fast paced and we were really focused on what is a critical success factor. It's kind of, it's an essential ingredient to our success. It is kind of the how that we want to, how are we going to achieve the what's that we've identified as our priority recommendations. And so I just want to, it was interesting because we chose to first have separate conversations for each of the recommendations, but there was so much commonality across those conversations. And so really, these are emerging themes. And so these are the themes that came out from all 14 or however many, 10, shoot, I don't know, all the conversations that we were able to have at that meeting. And I think that it is, it's like I could not have anticipated this is how it would emerge, but it's just, I feel like it's really nice. So as you're kind of thinking or reading about these, you know, please think, what do I really like about this, or what do we need to maybe modify? Because these have not been reviewed in discussion format before. The other things had been, but we have a solid 30 minutes here to kind of think through the 5 critical success factors that really emerged across the different recommendations. And as Carrie was kind of talking about the critical success factors, you know, it's really, we want to ensure that the work that we're going to do is scalable. So we have stakeholders in the room right now, but we want to make sure that we can share and spread this across all of our organizations so that nobody is left out. We want to ensure that it's going to have a high impact, and how do we know that we're making an impact? And then finally, the sustainability element, that we are not really relying on temporary or fleeting resources, but that we are able to sustain the work and the projects that we move forward.
And the only thing I would add to that, Lily, is to the sustainability piece, is that the sustainability also refers to internally how partners operate, that this isn't something that a single person participates in, and then when that person leaves, it leaves that connection point in that organization. It's about making sure that these are priorities in your organizations, that they are filtered down through conversations, that people understand their role in them, and that continues for the long term.
Thank you, Carrie. Yes, the human capacity element is also important for sustainability. Okay, so 5 critical success factors emerged, and one of those that was stated repeatedly was around institutional and organizational commitment from the highest levels of leadership. So really ensuring that everybody is on board, and even though I might be a frontline, like boots on the ground person who's dealing with this every day, I know that I have the support, and it is a priority of our overall institution to engage in this work. And so I think that there's an element of not just one time getting commitment from leadership, but continuing to keep them engaged and aware, and, you know, up to date on the progress that's being made and how it's impacting retention, completion, economic mobility, and all of the other important success metrics that we track. And we'll be exploring ways to embed commitment as we move forward. So I think that, you know, when there are opportunities for collaborative grants, you know, or other partnerships, you know, that those will be engaged, that our highest levels of leadership will be very much aware and committed to the engagement. So any thoughts on that? Any additional comments?
Hi, this is Peggy from Murray State. I just think too, with that commitment, that it needs to include financial and people staffing commitment. And I don't know that it needs to be described at that point, but that is a big hurdle. You know, we do these things and then there's maybe one-time money or a grant or something, and then it's gone. We can't sustain that. So that financial and human, yeah, is important.
Thank you, Peggy. So moving into infrastructure. This action network is probably, it's going to evolve. So, you know, this particular group and this charge has been fulfilled. And so as we move forward, what is going to be our infrastructure for sustainability and for continued engagement, all the communications elements, et cetera. And so thinking about that, you know, and also from the collaborative's perspective, you know, I've been able to, you know, dedicate time to doing the convenings and the meeting planning and those kind of things. But as we scale, you know, that's going to be beyond the capacity of me to kind of manage and lead all of that. So I think that it is really important that we establish or think about the infrastructure for this coordinating work, this really highly collaborative work. And there we have, so the Kentucky put forward an application to participate in the Massachusetts Department of Higher Ed's student basic needs cohort for technical assistance and also just learning across states. And so we have kind of identified a group that is kind of a subset of this larger action network group, representative, but a subset to be a part of that state team. And that will be, I think it will be a helpful group in guiding what work groups do we need to put forward? How do we engage the right partners in those work groups? The collaborative already offers and facilitates a community of practice around student basic needs that's open to everybody in the state. And so being able to kind of spread that word and really engage folks more broadly in the community of practice. But I think that there'll be, you know, other really focused projects that come out of this where it's all connected, it's all spokes off the wheel of our priorities around basic needs. But we'll just need to make sure that we can manage the different elements of the work. And this is one, you know, Peggy, your comment about making sure that institutional commitment is there. This is an important element of that, you know, that we are committed and that our organizations are able to dedicate the time of their team's capacity to help manage and lead the work forward. So I think that, you know, if any of you are interested in staying engaged in this work, which I hope everybody is, we will be able to kind of send out what do those opportunities look like and where do you think is the best fit for you to continue to serve or to be a part of it. And of course, that would not at all be any kind of a requirement, but just an opportunity. Okay, as we think about asset mapping, I think that this one emerged as just an essential element in order for us to be as effective and efficient as possible. There are so many resources that each of our organizations can bring to the table, both financial and human, and probably other kind of gifts in time, gifts in kind, or other services. And so, but we have realized that we don't really have our arms wrapped around all of that. And so really a critical element of this, I think, will be asset mapping. What we do have, and this could be connected to the commitment of our partners as well. What are our partners able and willing to commit as assets and resources dedicated to supporting this common work? And so that is an independent project that I almost see a funder being able to help us facilitate through some financial support to get the work done. But that I think is a really essential element. It connects to the commitment piece, and it also just helps us know who's on first for what, and how do we connect with partners when there's a specific things that comes up. Does that make sense to everybody? Is there anything additional, any questions around this asset mapping, critical success factor? Okay. We also talked quite a bit about communications plans or communications in general. And how do we communicate effectively? And how do we communicate in culturally responsive ways and real asset-oriented ways that speak to students in language that they understand, or speak to clients in ways that they can really kind of see themselves in the next step, or whatever the message might be. I also know that we have really strong communications folks across all of our organizations. But I do think that this would be a great opportunity for a funding proposal as well, because it's a pretty discrete project. And in working with maybe an advisory group of communications folks, we could potentially get a really wonderful communication plan with assets, digital materials, et cetera, that could be adopted by all of our organization and institutional partners to help us have some consistent common messaging. The beauty of Kentucky is that there's only, wait, hold on, let me say, how do I say this? There's every county, all counties have the same programs available to them. In some states, right, Carrie, like Colorado, every county has a different approach to their basic needs or their benefits programs.
It's a they're county administered state. So counties
Okay.
have some flexibility on how they administer their program.
Okay, so when a student goes to school in a county that they don't live in, they could have totally different rules, and it could be almost super difficult for, go ahead, Carrie.
I don't know that it's worth getting into. The difference in county administered states is they have some flexibility over the operations. It doesn't affect eligibility. That's set at the federal and state level.
Okay. But I guess my point is that we could have a communication plan that could be relevant across all of our counties, and that could be relevant to students across Kentucky. And so, or clients across Kentucky. And so we have a good opportunity, I think, to leverage that advantage to doing something that would benefit our organizations and hopefully save us time and money. Okay. Don't get into the weeds, Lil. Got it. All right. And our final critical success factor that we really want to maximize is our data system. And I think that, whenever you're working on a project that is this kind of a scale, we want to know that we're moving the needle. We want to know that we're having an impact, that we're closing equity gaps, that we're enhancing economic mobility. And so to be really intentional about establishing some common metrics for success that would be common across our higher ed institutions, common across our community-based organizations and DCBS that really speak to these two primary objectives. And we want to look at our inputs, we want to look at our impact, and we want to look at the outcomes, the longer term outcomes of our efforts. I welcome anyone's thoughts on how comprehensive do we feel like these critical success factors are? Are we missing anything? Do you feel like this, if you remember back our meeting on the 26th, does this capture those conversations that we had? Let's see. Can I ask just a couple people to share any reflections? See, what about Ariane? What do you think, Ariane? Does this capture our conversations from the last meeting?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, I think it does. And just with the work that I've been doing, I've just confirmed like the asset mapping, the communication plans. I think are really helpful to have in place. And then as well as just the individual commitment, not just from our educational institutions, but from our community leaders as well, so they understand, you know, the bias or lack of understanding that we often get when we reach out to partner and initially with some community partners, not understanding that our students, you know, still have all these same needs as well. So I think that communication plan comes to follow up with that. So yeah.
Okay, great. I see some great chat action too. Thank you all for sharing. Okay, so that's, you know, the substance, those are the vegetarian meaty parts of the report. And it's going to, this is also, I think, one of the, you know, we'll be sharing this with a couple of funders and really see some opportunities for some support for Kentucky to ensure our critical success factors and our priority recommendations have some additional supports to move forward. Okay. I do have very excited to be able to share some wonderful news with everybody. And, you know, as a part of the meetings that we took place as an action network, we've also been having additional meetings to just keep all of our critical state leaders in the know, you know, just briefed on what's going on and what we're moving toward and what our goals are. And we've had a chance to meet with Secretary Friedlander, who's the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, as well as Secretary Link from the Education and Labor Cabinet, as well as Lieutenant Governor's office. We briefed Lieutenant Governor Coleman just yesterday or the day before. And so have really been continuing to make sure folks know what's happening in this space. And as we shared some of the emerging recommendations, folks latched on and they said, we would love to help with that. And specifically, Secretary Friedlander and Carrie Bohannon explored an opportunity to provide capacity to our college campuses through their connector program. And the connectors are outreach advocates that provide all sorts of support to community members. And they are willing to support full-time connectors, staff positions on our college and university campuses in Kentucky. So I hope that y'all heard that. This is great, amazing news. This is exciting. It is so exciting, y'all, because this helps us move forward with so many of our priority recommendations around objective number 1 right off the bat. And I think it also strengthens back the connections to DCBS and our community partners as well. So this is a huge win at our capacity building efforts, at our outreach and communications efforts, at our eligibility screening efforts, basically all of those beautiful things that we hope to accomplish. And we sometimes ask, well, I would love to do that. How am I going to make that happen? So here we have our first step. This is not the full solution to our capacity challenges. As Ariane can attest, one person on a college campus, you know, really gets overwhelmed quickly, but it is going to be a huge step forward. And we know that there are a lot of other ways and ideas that we can explore additional capacity for our campuses. But just like a teeny bit more information. So what is a connector? And anybody from DCBS, please feel free to jump in if I have, you know, if I need additional clarification. But connectors are employees of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services that are able to be placed full-time on college campuses to support students, as well as community members, as well as staff and faculty with the following responsibilities. They can provide outreach around basic needs resources and benefit programs. They can provide eligibility screening. They can assist with applications for SNAP, Medicaid, and the child care program. They can also refer students to any of the connector community-based resources. And that means that they won't just be serving students with any kind of certain income eligibility. They can serve all students who will struggle with basic needs at some point or another and help connect them with the resources that are needed. They can also provide training and professional development to our broader campus and faculty and staff around the resources that are available, the community partnerships, and how to help refer a student, as we know that that may be the first point of contact for our students. And they can also help with some of the communications campaigns and just doing overall outreach and awareness raising. So this is just kind of a start of what we have learned very recently from the cabinet. And so really excited. There will be a lot more information. I'm sure folks are very, have maybe more questions right now, but we're still very early on. So we will be able to make a much more formal announcement and share the next steps in the process in several weeks down the road. But just as I think, just hopefully like more wind in our sails, like more momentum as we see really the positive fruition of the work that we've done together. I'm happy to take a question or two about anything if anyone has a question. Okay, well, great, awesome. Okay, so stay tuned. Really excited. Next week on Tuesday, you all, is the webinar for our Campus Voice Research Project. I'm sure in our follow-up email, I'll make sure that you have that registration link if you haven't already registered. We will be able to send the recording out if for some reason you can't attend at that specific time. So register anyway is what I would recommend. And I'm sure that our faculty researchers have even more in-depth insights to share that they've gleaned through that research. So it'll be a great webinar. Our goal is to have a final draft of our report go to our internal kind of CPE team and process for review, and that we hope to then send back out to this group as a final document by June 9th. And then also in June, I'll be able to share more information about the connector on college campuses, details with our partners, and then what the next step might be in that process. It is still, we're still figuring out what this looks like. And then finally, we've really want to know what else should we be doing with this, what else should we be doing with this report, with the work of this Action Network? We want to have both a community of practice meeting with our higher ed, with a lot of the folks that we've engaged up to this point in the student basic needs work, but just make sure that they know what the Action Network is moving forward with so they can continue to benefit from the programs and other partnership opportunities we create. Also, we may just do a very broad, open to everyone in Kentucky webinar about the work and the recommendations of the Action Network. So please stay tuned for all of that. And then last, which this might actually be my last slide, yes it is, but we do have a couple of letters of interest that we've been asked to submit. So one from our friends at the ECMC Foundation, and so we'll be reaching out to them and sharing the great work of the Action Network, our state plan, our priorities, and our critical success factors, and we'll hopefully be able to receive some additional support for our work. I will say that timeline, like, don't get super excited. We submit a letter in June, they talk about it in October, we hear after that, but it's really good to just kind of keep all of these irons in the fire, like keep them moving. Well, it's 11:45. Did not anticipate that. I just want to share like my most heartfelt thanks to everybody here. I think that, at the very beginning of this, I really think that it's all about relationships. I think that progress moves at the speed of trust. And I think that we have all just really been engaged, and it's been wonderful getting to know you all. And I'm just really excited for all the work that we have ahead of us.
Lily, you've done a great job leading this team too. You've been a pleasure to work with, and you've done a great job leading the team.
Oh, thank you, Tommy. Thank you. Thank you all. All right, well, I'll give you back your time and I'll follow up with an email soon. So have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day and week and everything else.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Lily.
everyone.
It's
Thanks,
Erica at
everybody.
Southeast.